Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to crochet Aiden the goose. Aiden is the friendliest bird at the pond who loves to make you laugh. With a playful honk and a cheerful flap, Aiden's goofy antics are a reminder that life is best lived with a smile and a bit of fun. This pattern, like all the Kindness Company crochet patterns, is a quick crochet pattern, making it perfect for spreading crochet kindness. Aiden the Goose can be made in sport, DK, or bulky weight yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today I'll be crocheting Aiden in worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to pick up the matching magical crochet greeting card to make an adorable gift that your friends and family will absolutely love.
Started on Aiden the Goose's pattern, and the first part of our pattern is to make the body and head, and we're going to be working with this super bulky white yarn. And the first thing that we need to do is get a magic ring formed. So let's review how to form a magic ring. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white, and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn, and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press the yarn to those 2 fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand, and I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the 2 tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around, and then once we've got it around the top digit of those 2 fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our 2 fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these 2 wraps here. This is that one I just made, going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit, and then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb, and then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have 2 wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand, and we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have 2 wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my 2 hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the 2 of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. And we're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position, so kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those two identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook, so I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. All right, so I have my magic ring formed and we're ready to begin on round 1. And if you look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the instructions for round 1, and all subsequent rounds are going to be in the top left. So feel free to reference as we continue working. You can of course look at the written pattern as well. All right, so for round 1, we need to begin by putting 6 single crochet stitches inside of our magic ring. And two things, remember when we're working in our magic ring, we're going to be working in both the ring and over the tail of the ring too. And then when we're working with this bulky sort of chenille yarn, we need to be really careful to make our stitches nice and loose so that when we pull the tail, it won't break our magic ring. So we'll begin by taking our crochet hook and going both through the ring and underneath the tail we used to tie it. Then we're going to yarn under, meaning we're going to put the yarn under our hook and then draw that yarn through the ring and up into a nice tall loop here on our hook. Then to finish our single crochet stitch, we'll yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook and then draw that yarn through those 2 loops left on our hook. That forms our first single crochet stitch, and we're going to mark this stitch as well by taking our stitch marker and slipping it through both sides of that little V of our stitch. So there's our first single crochet stitch. We're going to continue adding single crochet stitches in that same way. So going through our loop, yarning under, and drawing that working yarn into a nice tall loop, then yarning over and drawing through both loops on our hook. So there's my second single crochet stitch. I'm going to keep adding single crochet stitches until I have all 3 of them in my magic ring. Alright, so when you have all 6 of your single crochet stitches in your magic ring, we're going to do the magic part by very carefully pulling that tail to close that first round. So pull carefully, because sometimes, especially with chenille and bulky yarn, that yarn can break and you'll have to start from the start again on your magic ring. Alright, so that's round 1 done. For round 2, we need to make 6 I and C stitches, so 1 in each of the 6 stitches from round 1. And an I and C stitch is an increase, and the way we'll make a single crochet increase is we'll put 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch from the previous round. So our stitch marker is marking that first stitch here that we're going to be working in, so we'll take that marker out and keep your eyes on where it is. And then we're going to take our hook and we're going to slip it through both sides of that stitch, just like we did with our marker, underneath both the front and the back loop of that V. And then from here, it's just like with our magic ring. We'll yarn under and draw our yarn through that stitch, then yarn over and draw through both loops. And that is our first stitch of the round, so we need to mark it as well. And then to finish our increase, we need to put another single crochet stitch in that same stitch from round 1. So we're going to go through the same stitch, just the same way we did from front to back. Yarn under and draw a loop, and yarn over and draw through both. And that makes 2 single crochet stitches coming out of the same hole or stitch from the previous round. So we're going to continue adding increases, going to our next stitch. You can kind of see along the top here the little legs of our V. We'll add our second single crochet stitch to that next stitch, and continue by adding a second to increase. And we're going to keep increasing until we are all the way around, and we'll have 12 stitches total, which is that number at the end of our instructions. That's how many stitches we need to have at the end of the round. So we'll keep adding increases. Alright, I am all the way around round 2. I'm going to go ahead and pull that magic ring tail one final time. And then I'm going to give it a trim, so I'll flip my work over. And then take my scissors and cut a tail. I'm not going to cut all the way off. I'm going to leave a little extra and then discard what I don't need. And that keeps our tail out of our way as we continue working. Alright, so we're ready for round 3, where we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of our round. So 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then mark that stitch. Another single crochet stitch in the second stitch of our round. Then we'll put an increase in the next 3 stitches of our round. So 1 increase here, our second increase in the next stitch, and our final increase in the third stitch. Then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. Then we're going to follow those with 3 more increases. So 1 increase here, second increase here, and our third increase here. And then in the last stitch of the round, we're going to put one single crochet stitch. And that wraps up round 3. So for round 4, we're going to put just one single crochet stitch in every stitch of the round. So one single crochet stitch in each of the 18 stitches from round 3. Alright, that's the end of round 4 for me. I'm ready for round 5, where we're going to begin by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. So there are my first 3 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to put 3 increases, one in the next 3 stitches of the round. There are my 3 increases. Then I'm going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of the round. There are my 6 single crochet stitches. Then I'll put 3 more increases, one in each of the next 3 stitches of my round. And then we're going to end by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches, or the last 3 stitches of the round. Alright, so that wraps up round 5. So for rounds 6 through 9, we're just going to put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Don't forget to mark the first stitch of each round as you go. And I will see you back here whenever I have finished round 9. Alright, so I have just finished round 9, and I'm ready to move on to round 10. So for round 10, we have some parentheses that we need to make. So we're going to start by doing the first instruction, which is to make one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. So there are those first 2 single crochet stitches, and then we need to make a DEC, or a decrease. So to do that, we're going to take our hook, go through the next stitch, yarn under, and draw through that stitch and a nice loop on our hook. Then repeat that in the stitch right after the one we just worked in. So go through the next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop. And then yarn over and draw through all 3 loops on your hook. And that takes those 2 stitches that we worked in and pulls them together into one V, or loop here, and decreases the amount of stitches that we have in our round. So that was everything inside of those parentheses one time. If you look outside of our parentheses, we have a multiplication sign and the number 6. So we're going to repeat this instruction in the order it appears. So single crochet, decrease. We're going to repeat that 5 more times for a total of 6 times all the way around for this round. And that should give us 18 stitches, that number at the end in the parentheses. That should give us 18 stitches total for round 10. So single crochet, single crochet, decrease, and that's my second repetition, so I'm going to keep repeating that pattern all the way around. Alright, that was round 10. I'm ready to start in on round 11, where we've got some more parentheses. And we'll begin by putting one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then a decrease in the next stitch of the round. And there's one repetition of those parentheses. We'll do that 5 more times for a total of 6. Alright, so that's the end of round 11. Before I move on to round 12, we need to place the safety eyes or embroider the safety eyes, and then also get started on stuffing Aiden's head. So first, let's go ahead and grab our safety eyes. Okay, so I have my safety eyes, and I'm going to be using these cute painted kind. You can use whatever kind you'd like, or if you are giving Aiden to a small child or a pet as a toy, you may want to embroider the eyes on instead. But I'm going to be using safety eyes for this, so I'm going to start by taking my crochet hook and pulling that loop on it nice and long. So that keeps my work from coming undone while I add the safety eyes. Then I'm going to take my work and I'm going to flip it so that loop I pulled is on the back side and the top of the head is now facing up. And then our safety eyes are going to go between rounds 8 and 9 and about 4 stitches apart. So I'm going to take my safety eye here and I'm going to count starting at my magic ring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm going to place my first safety eye in between those rounds. Once I've got that first safety eye placed, I'm going to take my second safety eye and I'm going to count my stitches 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches over from the first eye. So we need to be careful to save enough space for Aiden's beak because it's going to go in between those 2 safety eyes. We can also play around with the safety eyes. We can move them higher or lower or further apart, but I'm going to leave my eyes here like they are in the pattern. Once you're happy with their placement, you can take the little plastic backs that come with your safety eyes and snap them on the inside by pushing them onto the stem of the safety eye. So once the safety eyes are snapped onto Aiden's head, we can also grab some stuffing and start stuffing the body here. Alright, so I have Aiden's head stuffed here, and I'm ready to continue on in my pattern. So I'm going to take my hook and reinsert it into that loop that I drew up long, and then just tighten it back down onto my hook. And we left off on round 12, so let's go ahead and start right where we left by placing one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then a decrease in the next stitch. I'm you're going to repeat that pattern 2 more times for a total of 3 repetitions. And that wraps up round 12. So we're ready for round 13. And in round 13, we're going to be working in the front loops only. So let me take my stitch marker out and grab a yarn needle so I can show you a little easier where the front loops are. So far on our pattern, we've been working in both sides of our stitch. We've been going through from front to back and grabbing both parts of the stitch. But the stitch is actually made up of 2 loops. The front loop, this one here on my needle right now, closest to the front of our work, and the back loop, the one on my needle now, closest to the inside of our work. So for round 13, we're going to be working in just these front loops. And the easiest way to do that is to take our hook and to slip it up and underneath just the front part of that loop there. So snag just the front loop on your hook. And then from here, it's just a regular single crochet stitch. Yarn under and draw up a loop. Yarn over and draw through 2. And then mark that stitch as it's the first stitch of our round. So we're going to continue working in the front loops for all 9 of these stitches here in round 13. So I'm going to grab my next front loop. Alright, so that wraps up round 13 for me. I'm ready for round 14. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of our round. And then follow that with an increase. Then we're going to repeat that pattern another 2 times for a total of 3 repetitions. And that wraps up round 14, so for round 15 we're going to put just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 15 done for me. For round 16, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. Then follow that with an increase. And then repeat that sequence 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, that's round 16 done. Before I make round 17, I'm going to go ahead and add some more stuffing into the neck here of Aiden the goose. We're ready to start in on round 17, and we're going to put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So one single crochet stitch in each of the 18 stitches from round 16. Alright, that is round 17 done. We're ready for round 18. We're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. So there are my first 2 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to increase in the next stitch. And then we'll repeat that pattern of single crochet, increase 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions until we get to the end of this round. Alright, that wraps up round 18 for me. So for rounds 19 and 20, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So I will see you back here whenever I have finished round 20. Alright, so I just wrapped up round 20 and I'm ready to move on to round 21, where we begin by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then follow that with an increase. Then repeat that sequence another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around this round. Alright, that's round 21 done for me. So for round 22, we'll start by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then we're going to follow that with a decrease. And then we're going to repeat this sequence of 1, 2, 3 single crochet stitches and then decreasing 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around this round. Alright, that wraps up round 22. Before I move on to round 23, I'm going to go ahead and add some more stuffing to Aiden's body. Alright, so I added a little more stuffing. I'm going to go ahead and continue on with round 23, where I'll put one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. So there are my first 2 stitches of the round. Then I'll decrease. And then just like before, I'm going to repeat this pattern of 2 single crochet, decrease 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. Alright, that's round 23 done. I'm ready for round 24, where I'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then decrease right after. And then repeat that repetition pattern of 1 single crochet, decrease, 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. Alright, that wraps up this round. Before I make my last round, which is round 25, I'm going to add some more stuffing to the inside of the body here. Alright, I've added my stuffing and I'm ready to make my last round here on the body, which is to decrease in each of the stitches left for round 25. Alright, so there's my last decrease. I'm ready to go ahead and fasten off, and I'll do that by taking my stitch marker out. And then in the stitch it was just in, I'm going to slip stitch. So I'll take my hook, I'm going to go through that next stitch just like I would if I were about to make a single crochet stitch. Yarn under and draw through that stitch. And then I'm going to take the loop that I just created and keep drawing it through the only other loop on my hook. Then when I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and cut my working yarn. I need a little bit of it to sew with, so reserve yourself 6 inches or so and give it a snip. Then I'm going to pull that last loop here from my slip stitch on my hook until my cut working yarn, the tail here, goes all the way through. Then I'll take that tail that I've cut, and by pulling tightly, I can tighten that slip stitch down on the tail itself. Before I sew the bottom of this body closed though, I'm going to add just a pinch more of stuffing to it. And then we're ready to sew that last round closed by taking the tail that we cut, and we're going to thread it through the eye of our yarn needle. Once we've got it threaded through the eye of our yarn needle, we're going to be sewing through each of the front loops left behind from the 6 decreases we made from round 25. So just like with the neck when we worked in only the front loops, we're going to be grabbing just those front loops again. So I'm going to sew from bottom to top through this first stitch directly to the left of my tail that I cut. I'm going to pull that yarn all the way through and then rotate the body and do the exact same thing in my next stitch, so just the front loop. Then rotate, and I'll keep repeating that until I have sewn in each of those 6 decreases from the last round on the body. Once I have all 6 of those front loops from my last round sewn through, by very gently pulling the tail, and you have to be very careful with blanket or chenille yarn because sometimes this will break, but by pulling very gently, I can close that last round off, which closes the bottom of the body. Then to finish fastening off and weaving this tail in, we need to tie a surface knot. which is a bit of an embroidery trick. So to do a surface knot, we'll take our tail and we're going to loop it over the surface of our work, sort of forming the C shape or O shape. Then we'll take our yarn needle and we're going to sew into a little of the fabric up the body and then up through that O or C shape that we made. And then we're going to pull the yarn needle and the tail, and by going nice and slow, it'll take the shape that we made, that little O, and tie it around the tail. That helps keep the bottom of the body closed, and then we can take any remaining tail and weave it in by sewing close to where that knot is that we tied, and then up and through the body. By pulling the tail, we'll send that knot to the inside. Then we can unthread our yarn needle, and by pulling this tail and cutting with our scissors close to the fabric of the body, we weave the tail in. You can throw away anything that didn't get woven in. And that wraps up Aiden's body. Alright, so the next part of our pattern is the beak, and we're going to be working with the smaller weight orange or tangerine colored yarn. And the first thing we need to do to start the beak is tie a slip knot and chain. So let's review how to get a slip knot formed and how to make our first chain stitch. Alright, so let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to form a chain stitch. So we're going to take our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration, so just double check you're using the correct color from your pattern. And we're going to reserve ourselves a little bit of a tail, just like we do with our magic ring. So I'm going to take maybe 5 or 6 inches or so of my working yarn here, make myself a little tail. And then we're going to take that tail and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn. So we're sort of making like a lowercase letter B. So once we've got that wrapped around, we formed this loop here. We're going to kind of sandwich the working yarn with the tail. So bring it back around and kind of cross it over that loop. Sort of like a pretzel twist. Then when we've done that, what we need to do is draw this twist that we've just done, that strand, through this loop without pulling the tail all the way through, because that would just tie a knot. So I take my hook hand, which is my right hand, and I grab what I've laid over that loop and pull it. And then with my other hand, I grab my working yarn and then pull the loop through. And the reason I form my slip knots this way is because they tighten when you pull on the tail, but not when you pull on the working yarn. It won't tighten while you're trying to add stitches to it. So once you've got that slip knot formed, you're going to take your hook and slip it inside of the slip knot, and then pull the tail to tighten it into a loop down onto your hook. Then you're ready to begin tensioning by laying the working yarn over your yarn index finger. So for me, that's my left index finger. And then wrapping the rest of your fingers around our working yarn. And then I like to hold on to the slip knot itself with my middle and thumb on my yarn hand. And then we're ready to form a chain. So to chain, we'll take our hook and we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook, and then draw the working yarn through the slip knot we tied, and then pull up to form a nice tall loop. So that's our first chain. To continue chaining, we're going to just keep yarning over and drawing a nice tall loop through each time. One final thing though, the loop on your hook, as I'm sure I may have mentioned in the video before, that doesn't count as a stitch. This is sort of like a stitch in progress. So right now I have 2 chain stitches formed. I'll yarn over and draw another stitch through. That'll be 3, 4. And as you add chain stitches, I tend to move my middle and my thumb up closer to my hook to help me sort of tension my yarn a little easier. So as I chain, I just keep shifting my hand down the stitches that I've just created. Alright, so that's how you tie a slip knot and chain. Alright, so now that we have reviewed how to form a slip knot and how to chain, we're ready to start here on round 1, and we'll begin by chaining 6 stitches. So once we have all 6 of our chain stitches made, we're going to start by putting a single crochet stitch in the second chain from our hook. So we don't count the loop on our hook, so we'll count back 1, 2 chain stitches, and then make our first single crochet in that chain stitch. So we'll slip through our chain stitch, yarn under, and draw up a loop, and then yarn over and draw through both to form our first single crochet, which we're also going to mark with our stitch marker. Then we're going to continue adding single crochet stitches in the remaining 4 stitches of our chain. So here's my second single crochet, my third, fourth, and then we're going to put our last single crochet in the slip knot that we tied. And then we're going to be working up the other side of the chain for the rest of the round. So I'm going to pull my slip knot tail really tight here, and then swing my chain around so that I can then flip my hook around and grab the chain here on the other side. So I'm going to kind of swing around, grab that chain, and then we're going to continue adding single crochet stitches to this side of the chain. So here's my first. And you can see that helps flip you around to the other side of the chain. Second, third, and my last single crochet on this side of the chain. And then we're going to end this round by slip stitching to that first single crochet that we made and marked. So I'm going to take that stitch marker out and then slip stitch to that stitch by going through both sides of the stitch, yarning under, and then drawing that loop I just created through the only other loop on my hook. And then we also need to chain 1 to end this round. So we'll chain 1 stitch, and then we're going to mark that chain 1 with our stitch marker. Alright, and that sets us up for round 2, which is the only round left on our beak, where we're going to just be putting 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 9 stitches we created for round 1. So we'll start by placing our first single crochet stitch. If you look carefully, you'll see it looks like I should go here, but that's actually the stitch we slip stitched to and chained 1 out of. So we're going to go to the very next stitch of our round and place our first single crochet in this stitch. So there's my first, there's my second stitch, 3, 4, here's my last single crochet, my 9th single crochet stitch. And then to finish the beak off, we're going to slip stitch to that chain 1 that we made and marked from round 1. So I'll take that stitch marker out And I'm going to slip stitch to that place where it just was. Then we are ready to fasten off and then get the beak attached, so we need to reserve a tail to sew with. Leave yourself about 6 to 8 inches, so take your working yarn and give it a snip. Then we'll take that slip stitch that we made on the end of round 2 and draw that last loop all the way long until the tail we cut goes through the stitch we made. And then we can take that slip stitch and tighten it down. I'm also going to take the tail left over from when I started my slip knot, and I'm going to trim it short but not off. You can discard anything you don't use. And then with the remaining tail we left, just lay it along the inside of the beak here, which keeps it out of our way. When we sew the beak on, we're also going to be attaching it flat. So we're going to take our slip knot and make it so that it's the right or the left hand corner of our beak, and then just pinch the beak flat with your fingers. Then we'll take the tail that we've cut and thread it through the eye of our yarn or tapestry needle. I'm going to be using a tapestry needle because I like using a sharper needle to attach things to the body of any crocheted piece. So we'll thread that tail through our tapestry needle's eye, and then we're ready to attach the beak to Aiden's body. So we'll grab Aiden's body, and we're going to be attaching it by sewing through both layers of the beak and through stitches in round 10, which is the round right underneath where our eyes are. So this is round 8 and 9. We'll be attaching it here on round 10. So center it so that it's centered between the right and the left eye. And then to attach, we'll grab a little fabric from Aiden's body in round 10. So I'm going to sew from under the beak up to the top. And then I'm going to go through both layers of the beak, sewing back down. And I'll repeat that, grabbing some of the fabric from round 10 of Aiden's head. And then sewing back down through both layers of the fabric of the beak, moving my way across, attaching the beak as I go. Alright, so once you've sewn all the way across on the beak, we're ready to go ahead and tie a knot and fasten this orange tail in. So to do that, we're going to make another surface knot, and I'm going to make mine really close to where the beak attaches to the face. So I set my tail up, and I'm right next to where the beak and the face meet. I'm going to make another loop, sew down into some of the fabric of the face, and up through the center of that loop I've made. And that'll tighten it into a surface knot, which I'm then going to sew down into the fabric of the head and out through any old place. And by pulling that tail, I'll bring the knot to the inside of Aiden's head. Then I can unthread my tapestry needle, and by pulling tightly on that orange tail, I can trim it close to the fabric of Aiden's head, discard anything I didn't weave in. And that is the beak attached and the extra tail woven in. Alright, so next up we need to make Aiden's wings, and we need to make 2 of these, so we'll walk through how to make one, and then you'll need to make a second wing before we get them attached. So we're going to begin with this white fluffy yarn, just like we used for Aiden's body, and we're going to start by forming a magic ring. Okay, once you've got your magic ring formed, we're ready to start in on round 1, where we're going to place 6 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. Alright, when you have all 6 stitches for round 1, you can pull the tail of your magic ring to close. And that sets us up for round 2, where we need to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of our round. And then an increase in the next stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern of 1 single crochet increase 2 more times. And that wraps up round 2. So for round 3, we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then an increase in the third stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern 2 more times for a total of 3 repetitions. Which wraps up round 3. For round 4, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So 1 single crochet in each of the 12 stitches from round 3. Alright, that wraps up round 4 for me. For round 5, we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the first 2 stitches of the round. And then a decrease, and we'll repeat that sequence 2 more times. 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, decrease. And that's the end of round 5 for me, and round 6, which is our last round of the wing, we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then a decrease. And keep repeating that pattern 2 more times. And that wraps up the wing for me, so let's fasten off. We'll take our stitch marker out, and we're going to slip stitch in the stitch our marker was just in. And then we need to cut a tail to attach the wing onto the body. 6 inches or so ought to do it. And then we'll pull that slip stitch until the tail comes all the way through, and then tighten down. I'm also going to trim the magic ring tail from when we started so it stays out of my way. And when we attach the wings, we're going to be attaching them flat and sewing through both sides of the wing just like we did on the beak. So that's one wing. Let's get one more made and then get them attached. Alright, I have both of my wings made and I'm ready to attach them to Aiden's body. So I'll start with one, and I'm going to thread the tail that I cut when I finished crocheting the wing through the eye of my yarn needle. And then make sure I have the wing itself folded flat because we're going to be sewing through both layers while we attach it to the body, which we'll go ahead and grab. And I'm going to attach them so that they are just a little below the neck and directly even with the side of the head. So to attach, we'll grab some of the fabric from the body and then sew up through both layers of the fabric of the wing. And then we're going to keep repeating that, grabbing some of the body, sewing through the wing, until we have sewn all the way across and have fully attached the wing to the body. So once you've fully attached the wing, we need to tie a surface knot. So I'm going to take the tail, I'm going to send it to the back of the wing and into the body itself. And here I'll tie my surface knot. So I'm going to loop that tail over the work, grab a little fabric from the body and sew up through that loop I've just formed. And then pull to tie a knot. And I'll weave this tail in by sewing it into the body and out through just any old place. Once I've done that, I can unthread my yarn needle, and by pulling that tail tight and trimming, I'll weave it in, which attaches the wing to the body. So let's repeat with the other wing on the other side. Alright, I have both wings attached, and I'm ready to move on to the next part of my pattern. Alright, so next up we need to make the legs, and just like with the wings, we'll need two. So I'll walk you through how to make the first, and then you'll need to make a second before we get them attached. And we're going to be working with that lighter weight tangerine orange colored yarn. And we need to begin by tying a slip knot, just like with the beak, and chaining. So we'll get our slip knot formed. And then to begin round 1, we'll start by chaining 6 stitches. So there are my 6 stitches chained. Then in the second chain from our hook, we're going to make a single crochet increase. So remember, we don't count the loop that's on our hook, so we'll count back 1, 2 chains, and we're going to make an increase in this chain. So here's our first stitch. I'll go ahead and mark that stitch as well. And then we need to finish by adding a second single crochet stitch in that same chain, since we need an increase. Then we'll make 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 chains. So there are my 3 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to place 3 single crochet stitches in that last chain, which is technically our slip knot. And that's going to help us flip around to the other side of the chain. So here's my first, second, and my last. Then I'm going to pull the tail of my slip knot tightly to tighten that last stitch, which kind of helps me swing around and begin working up the other side of the chain. So in the other side of the chain, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 4 other sides of the chains. So here's my first single crochet. And my last. And that wraps up round 1. So for round 2, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in each of the stitches we made for round 1. So all 12 of the stitches from round 1, we're going to just put one single crochet in for round 2. So we'll put our first single crochet stitch in that stitch that we had marked, and then remark. Then continue adding single crochet stitches. Alright, so that is round 2 done for me. For round 3, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then decrease. And then repeat that pattern another 3 times for a total of 4 repetitions around. So one single crochet stitch, decrease, Alright, so that wraps up round 3 for me. For round 4, we're just going to put one single crochet stitch in each of the 8 stitches we made in round 3. So that's just one single crochet in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's the end of round 4 for me. Before I make round 5, I'm going to take the tail I made to tie my slip knot. I'm going to give it a trim and discard any extra to keep it out of my way as I continue working around. Alright, so for round 5, we're going to work one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. So here's my first. And we're going to mark that one. Alright, so there are the first 5 single crochet stitches. We're going to leave the remainder of the stitches of this row unworked. And we're going to actually chain 1 and turn our work. And now that I have my first chain, I'm going to skip the first stitch of this round here and work one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. So I'm skipping my first and working one single crochet, 2, and 3. And then that last single crochet stitch of this round that's marked, we're going to leave this one unworked as well. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out of that stitch, and we're leaving it behind. Then we're going to chain 1 stitch again and turn, and this time we're going to skip that first stitch again and work in the next 2 stitches, so 1 single crochet in each. And then for round 6, we're going to begin by working down the side of this little flap that we've made here that's taller than the front of the foot here. So we're going to work down the side by placing 1 single crochet stitch on the sides of both of those rows that we made when we turned. So we'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch sort of in the side of this stitch here, that chain 1 from turning our last row. So I'm going to slip my hook straight through that and make a single crochet stitch in that stitch there. And then I'm going to mark this stitch because it's the first stitch of this round. Then we'll make another single crochet stitch in the other chain that we made to turn. So we'll have two that go down this little flap that we've been working on. And then we're going to make one single crochet stitch in the 4 stitches around the front of the foot. So we'll stretch our hook and grab that first stitch, that one that was unworked, and make one single crochet, and then continue working in those. So here's my second, third, and fourth. And then we're going to do the same thing we did on this side. We'll put 2 single crochet stitches working our way up the other side of that little flap that we made. So I'm going to put my first stitch here, and then my second stitch in that chain that we made to turn. And then the very last thing we need to do to finish off this round is we're going to single crochet these 3 stitches together along the back of the foot. So I've worked in the side of this stitch here. Now to work the top part of the stitch, I'll push my hook through, yarn under and draw through where I've pushed my hook through, then go into the next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop again, and then the same thing in that last stitch, draw up a loop. So you'll have 4 loops on your hook, and then we're going to yarn over and draw through all 3 of those to single crochet all 3 of them together. It's like a really big decrease, kind of. Alright, so that is round 6. For round 7 through 11, we're just going to work around putting 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch of the leg. So that's 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 9 stitches we just made for round 6. So I will see you back here whenever I have finished single crocheting every stitch for round 11. Alright, so I've just finished round 11 and I'm ready to work round 12 here. And round 12 is actually really easy. We're just going to work the first 2 stitches of the round. So 1 single crochet stitch in each. And then the rest of this round we're going to leave unworked, and we're ready to fasten off, and we're going to do that by slip stitching in the next stitch of the round. And then we need to cut a tail to sew with, so about 6 inches or so. And then pull that last slip stitch all the way through and tighten. And then we're going to add a little pinch of stuffing into the stem of the leg here. Alright, so that's the leg stuffed for me. We're also going to go ahead and take this tail that we've cut and use it to sew the top of the leg flat. So let's go ahead and get that tail threaded through the eye of our tapestry needle. We're going to just sew this leg closed by sewing through the stitches along the top. Alright, so that is one of the legs complete. We need to make one more and then we can get them attached to Aiden's body. Alright, so I have both of Aiden's legs complete and I'm ready to go ahead and get them attached. So I'm going to start by threading one of the tails left over from when we crocheted through the eye of my tapestry needle. And then we're going to attach it onto Aiden's body around round 22. And they're going to be about 1 stitch apart as well. So they sort of sit on the front side of the body just like this. And since we sewed the tops of the legs together already, we're going to just go through that same piece of fabric. And we'll attach them the same way we attach the wings and the beak, by getting some of the fabric of the body and then grabbing some of the fabric of the leg. And we're just going to keep working around the top of the leg. And we'll sew until we've gone all the way across and the leg is attached. And then we're going to want to tie another surface knot. So I'm going to send the tail right where the leg meets the body. And then we'll tie our surface knot. And then weave that tail into the body itself. And then cut. And that is the first leg attached. We need to attach the other leg about 1 stitch apart on that same round on the front of the body. Alright, that is both of the legs attached. Alright, so last, let's go ahead and get Aiden's scarf crocheted. So we're going to be using this lighter weight turquoise colored yarn, and begin by tying a slip knot. And then to start, we're going to chain 51 stitches. Alright, so I have all 51 of my stitches chained. So to make the scarf, we're going to be slip stitching down this chain that we've made. So starting in the second chain from our hook, and remember we don't ever count the loop on our hook, we'll go through and create a slip stitch. And then we're going to keep slip stitching in every chain stitch all the way down until we reach our slip knot. So I will see you back here whenever I have slip stitched in all 50 of these chains and show you how to fasten off the scarf. Alright, so I just finished my last slip stitch and I'm ready to fasten off and get some tassels made. So I'm going to make these 2 tails left over from the crochet portion and the slip knot portion of this scarf here act as like the tassel on this side, sort of save myself a little time. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a medium length tail, 6 inches or so, with that working yarn. And then I'm going to take my crochet hook and I'm going to use both of these tails. So I'm going to grab both the one I just cut and the slip knot tail. I'm going to pull them through the loop left on my hook. And just keep pulling until I've pulled both of them through. And then I'll tighten the slip knot tail and then that slip stitch tail at the very end that I just made. And then I'm going to cut these tails short and sort of unwind them a little bit to look more like a tassel. So I'm just twisting the opposite direction that these yarns are twisted together and sort of pulling them apart. I'll do that on the other as well. Which gives this sort of a tassel look here on the end. And then I'll repeat on the other side with one of the tails that I cut. I'm going to kind of recycle here a little bit. So I'm going to take that tail that I cut and I'm going to fold it in half, kind of loop it over on itself like this. Then I'll take my hook. I'm going to go through the very end of the scarf on this side and then grab that loop that I made and pull it through. And then I'm going to grab those two tails just like I did with my slip knot and the other tail that I cut, and I'll pull them both through that last loop until they go all the way through. Then I'm going to cut these tails about the same length as the ones on the other side, and then unravel them just like I did on the other side as well. Which gives the end of the scarf sort of a tassel. Alright, so next let's go ahead and get the scarf put onto Aiden. Alright, so here is Aiden. I'm going to go ahead and take his scarf and wrap it around and give it a tie. And then one of the last things that we can do here for Aiden is we can add some rosy cheeks. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some blush. So for the rosy cheeks, you can also use acrylic paint, but I'm going to use some blush like what I would normally use on my own face for makeup. And we're going to just dab some here alongside, just underneath both of the eyes. And once you've added the amount you like, I usually just blend it in a little bit. And with that final touch, Aiden's tutorial is done.